Hey, this is Malika of Evanston Live TV, and we have back with us again the man who gives us great insight, new perspectives on things that are going on that we're having to deal with spiritually, especially during this time period. Is Reverend Dr. Michael Nabors of Second Baptist Church and also president of the NAACP North Shore. Welcome back, Pastor.
Thank you, Malika. I'm happy to be back.
So we are going to be tackling righteous indignation. Now, when I think of that term, I think of anger, and there's an awful lot of anger going on around the country right now.
Yeah.
I know the young man, Ahmaud Arbery.
Yeah.
Was hunted down, gunned down for jogging in the state of Georgia, in a town in Georgia. And that was back on February 23rd of this year. And those men were not arrested. They were just arrested yesterday, May 7th. So, you know, that is anger that is beyond belief. I mean, around the country, but definitely for the Black community, we feel it on a whole nother level. It's horrifying. It's terrifying. The rage that we feel, and our hearts go out to his family. I mean, it's just insane. And then here locally, you know, we have our reparations. You know, we're excited about Evanston being the pioneer and possibly, you know, open the door to other states in our country to look at reparations and know that it's a possibility, just for the city of Evanston to put it on the table as possible discussion of possible cuts. So, you know, many people are feeling it shouldn't have even been up for discussion as any sort of cuts done. Sure. It's been 400 years. We got to wait longer now? You know, come on now.
Understood. Yeah.
So, Pastor, please talk to us. It's so much anger. Me personally, I'm afraid for my nephews, my nieces. It's an anger that you can't even describe. Mm-hmm. You just want to get physical. Because you can't express it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Malika, let me offer what I can in terms of placing this in some sort of context. Righteous indignation is, to me, a very, very important phrase, and it is a phrase that I think speaks well to the history that African Americans have faced in the United States, specifically as a result of racism and all of the ways that racism has been made manifest. So racism did not die when slavery ended in 1863. It simply took on new forms, and those new forms were just as compelling and wicked and nasty as slavery, whether it was the KKK or the White Citizens Council or Jim Crow or separate but equal, or the number of forms of discrimination in terms of institutional and systemic racism that has created inequities century after century, decade after decade, and year after year. So we're dealing with all of that. And let me share, for those who believed or had some hope that a pandemic might bring us together, you know, that a pandemic might reduce or tear down the walls of division because we're all in this together facing this invisible enemy, as they say. Well, that ain't happening. Yeah, racism is as alive and real as it's ever been. And this is particularly true in the tragic case of the death of Ahmaud in Brunswick, Georgia. So what I want to say, though, because you started talking and you mentioned anger, and I want to say that there is a difference between anger and righteous indignation. And anger, it seems to me, can be a very, very deep-seated bitterness that will devour your soul if you allow it. If you wake up every day and you're angry at the world, you're angry at white folks because of the history of racism and discrimination that has existed, that is going to cloud your judgment. It's going to cloud your clarity. It's going to cloud your ability to be nice and kind and compassionate and all of that. That's why sometimes, Malika, we're just mean, man. You were mean. Well, why is the brother so mean? Well, man, we are bearing some burdens, over hundreds of years. And it is because we seem to focus more on anger than we do on righteous indignation. So anger is a bitterness that devours the soul, but righteous indignation is, Malika, it's ethically driven. It is a righteousness. We are indignant because of the wrong and the injustice that has occurred in the lives of our people. And for Black people, let me say this because I think it's true. While we start with our own sense of having been denied so much because of racism, our righteous indignation is not just related to us. We are also righteously indignant in relationship to the genocide of Native Americans in the United States. We're also righteously indignant because of anti-Semitism against our Jewish brothers and sisters. We're also righteously indignant when our Muslim brothers and sisters are facing Islamophobia. And many of us, we're getting to that point, not all of us are there, but I'm going to say it. Many Blacks are getting to the point where we're also righteously indignant because of homophobia, where people are being discriminated against simply because of their sexual preferences and choices. So it starts with racism, though. So we're living in this pandemic where the whole world has changed. We're living in the age of COVID-19, where everybody in the United States, everybody has, wound up being isolated because that was the reality that we were facing. And then we hardly had time to think about, racism, really, right? And all of a sudden, up comes the cover of what happened in Brunswick, Georgia. And we as Black people realize, well, it didn't go away. Racism hasn't disappeared, it's still here. Right. And do you know how it's manifesting itself now? Let me tell you how it's manifesting itself now. We've got an administration, white. We've got governors of states, white. We have mayors of many cities, white, who have decided, not based on empirical, scientific, and medical data, but they've decided based upon their own hunches that they're going to reopen the United States. They're going to reopen these states, reopen these cities, and all of that. And do you know what that means? That means that Black and brown people are going to be subject to the spread of this coronavirus more than any other race. Because we are literally 37% of Black jobs are related to jobs where people are going to be prone to catching coronavirus. They're service-oriented jobs, working at the airport, working in a restaurant, coming into contact with other people. So those folk don't care about that. And the reason why they don't care about it is because they're placing economy over people. They're placing profit over people. So the same racism that started with the institution of slavery is now a racism that is trying to create an economy that's going to kill our people. And so we can be angry at that. You hear it in my voice, right? But I'm not so angry that, my judgment is clouded. Right. I'm angry because of the injustice that racism is meting out against our people everywhere. It's not opening our society back up. It's killing our society. And the numbers are going to rise if we're foolish enough to go outside. As one of the rappers down in Atlanta said, I ain't going outside until they start opening all the golf courses and all of the tennis courts and, all of the polo places that white folk, we know that we say that's tongue in cheek, but that's the reality that we're facing. So I just want you to know, it's okay to be righteously indignant. So when we think about that, we think about it in biblical terms. So God had a righteous indignation, I guess, when we read about the story of the flood, right? Sin all over the world here and there. So God becomes indignant and a flood occurs, right? So we have moments where there is righteous indignation that occurs in the Bible. Jesus had a sense of righteous indignation when he went into the temple and he said to those who were who were selling goods in the temple, my father's house is a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of thieves. And he began to turn over the tables. So it's not that Jesus was just all mad and angry and ready to fight somebody, but he was angry with the injustice because his people were being mishandled and they were being discriminated against. So we got to have that fire. And I think this is a venue. I think your show is a venue that allows that fire to go out so that hundreds and hundreds of people can see. It's not just that Black people are angry. Some of us are. I encourage our people not to be angry, because anger is going to carry you to an early grave. Anger is going to give you stress. Anger is going to give you hypertension and high blood pressure. Anger is going to take you to the table, have you eating things that you shouldn't eat and all of that. But righteous indignation is going to have you sitting down and thinking and plotting and planning and strategizing and saying, now this is what we need to do to overcome this. Thank God, as you mentioned, that's what Blacks in Evanston did in 2019. They plotted and planned and came up with the first municipal reparations program in the United States of America, in the history of the world. How beautiful is that for people of color? We were just on a phone call last night, Malika. There were over 30 of us. And we've got committees and we've got subcommittees, and we are working on bringing this to the forefront so that city council and the mayor recognizes you can deal with a whole lot of different things, but you can't deal with what we agreed upon with reparations last year. Because if Black people need it more, right, than ever before, we need it now. Because COVID-19 is affecting our people and Latinx community at higher rates than any other group in the country. Right.
And they were saying, well, it's affecting everyone in Evanston. I'm like, well, hello, welcome to our world. The only difference is COVID-19. So I just have no words for why that is even up for discussion. I
know. Well, look at the statistics, Malika, to help you calm down, right? Look at the statistics. So there are about 400 people in Evanston who have come down with coronavirus, right? Now, if you look at it on a demographic timeline, not a timeline, but a demographic barometer, then believe it or not, 23% of those affected are Black people. You know, we do not represent 23% of the population in Evanston, but get this, 37% of those affected in Evanston are of the Latinx population. So the Latin people don't represent 37% of the population in Evanston either. So when people say that, well, COVID-19 is colorless, it's affecting everybody, when you do those numbers even larger, I've heard some people suggest that nearly 50% of people who have been affected with coronavirus and who are dying from it are people of color. And we do not represent 50% of the population in America. I mean, specifically Black people. I'm not talking about Latinx. Yep. So again, don't let it frustrate you. Let it fill you with righteous indignation. So when they say that, you sit down, you open up that computer, you do your research and get your statistical information together and say, look, my brother, look, my sister, here's where you're wrong. Every indicator suggests that people of color are suffering. And if we were suffering before, because of all of the inequities that occur in the healthcare system, in the education system, you can bet your bottom dollar we're going to suffer even more as a result of COVID-19 and its aftermath.
That's right. And why don't they see that? Why don't they see it? So it just makes me wonder, like, what is really in, not everybody at the city, but some of the spirits and the hearts, of some of our city officials. Like, what is in your heart? What is in your soul? You have to know that you're going to continue on in injustice by even saying, well, we're thinking of, taking some of the money from reparations and helping everybody. 400 years, that's all I have to say. Right,
I understand. But let me reassure you that even though that idea or theory came up as a possibility, you need to know it got shot down.
Yes.
So that is not going to happen. Reparations money will not be taken and used for the relief of COVID-19. That is not going to happen. That has been defeated by City Council. So even though a couple of people may have raised it as an issue, keep in mind the majority of people shot it down and said, we are not touching reparations. So as it stands, we still will be receiving 3% from the taxes on cannabis, from the sale of cannabis. And the first revenue will probably come in around the 1st of October. So keep that in mind. It's not like the money's going to be available tomorrow, but we are again strategizing and working on how that money is going to best influence and help the majority of Black people in the city of Evanston. So you got to keep in mind.
Something productive.
Yeah, absolutely. So it doesn't matter to me that there are a few people, who bring up these far-fetched ideas because they haven't thought them through. The reality of racism is that we've always had that. The reality is that, that's called white privilege. It's called white entitlement. It's called looking at life and the world through only your lenses and not through the lenses of anybody else. So we're going to continue to have that. But our job and our responsibility, as long as we are here, is to teach, to confront in a loving way. I'm trying to be loving. I'm not trying to confront anybody, make them feel all bad, and start crying. But I am trying to educate you. And if you refuse to be educated based upon the empirical information that I'm bringing to the table, based upon the research that I've done and the professionals that I've talked to, and you're just going to say, well, I have a hunch or I have a theory, I'm not talking to you. You got to leave. You got to get away from the table. I don't know how we're dealing with Trump as the president of the United States. It makes absolutely no sense. Every single day he's talking about he's got a hunch. And he's got all of these brilliant people around him who are saying the exact opposite thing of what he's decided to do. He is driven by money and profit. He's driven by his wealthy friends and by his own wealth. It is atrocious that in his own family, they have stood to receive hundreds of millions of dollars from the CARES Act. And that's just inappropriate. Mm-hmm. It makes no sense, whether it's your hotels, whether it's your son-in-law's businesses or something like that. No, y'all rich. You don't need any taxpayer dollars or any dollars from our federal government. The people who need them are the people who are dying and the people who are suffering, and they are Black and brown people.
Exactly. Gosh, I wish they could just have vision of what this country would look like if no one was below poverty line, if everybody was just comfortable, just doing well. Everyone.
Oh, wouldn't that be beautiful? You're talking about beloved community now. Yeah, you are. Wouldn't it be beautiful? Yeah, but you know what the problem would be, Malika, if we had that kind of society, that kind of world, or even in Evanston, if everybody's living comfortably and doing well, who's going to clean their houses? Who's going to do the landscape for their yards? Who's going to be their maid? Who's going to be their chauffeur? Who's going to, that stuff still exists, right? That ain't from Gone with the Wind in the 1930s.
Right.
That stuff still exists. These service jobs are jobs where people are barely able to make it. They're barely getting by. And we have a economy and a society that is based and structured on the haves and the have-nots. And so right now, we don't have people in office who can tear that vision down and build another vision like the one you're talking about. They're not in power. They are in office. I like the sister from New York City now, Alexandria. Oh my God, she's amazing. I like Maxine Waters. I love her to death. Don't get me wrong. We got people there, but they're not quite in the power position to begin to redesign the United States of America. And that's why this election is so important in November, because we are at the prime time to actually redesign our nation. We can rebuild and restructure the United States based upon what you just said, where everybody is comfortable.
Everybody's comfortable. Everybody.
Oh my goodness. We ought to run for something, Malika. We ought to run for something, man. I'm telling you.
I know it's possible. Someone who's cleaning homes, they should still be able to get health care. They should still be able to get, send their kids to get a great education and be okay and just be able to pay. Not everybody wants to be rich. Some people just want their house paid for, a running, working vehicle, knowing that they got food in the pantry and they go to church and they're good, you know, they go to work, they feel good, you know.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I would say most people just want to be all right, you know.
Yes, yes.
Most people just want to be all right. And why
Yeah.
can't we have that? I don't
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah. Well, it's two things, you know. It's hubris and avarice, and hubris is that old Greek word which means pride, and avarice is another word for greed. Pride and greed in the hands of the wealthy, in the hands of those who are in positions of power and authority, right? Greed and pride will always destroy a society. And no matter what you look at, if you look at it historically, if you look at Rome, if you look at Greece, if you look at Egypt, if you look at these ancient dynasties, how did they topple? How did they fall apart? They fell apart internally because the wealthy took advantage of the poor to the point where the poor finally rose up and said, we're not having it. And I think at some point, now I know I'm going to get in trouble. I don't know whether you want to cut this out or not. I believe this. I believe that one day there is going to be a real poor people's revolution. And I believe that that poor people's revolution is going to be all about what you just described. Not poor people wanting to take the positions of the wealthy, but poor people wanting an equal distribution of the resources in America and in the world. So everybody is eating something every day, so that everybody has a roof over their head, so that everybody has a job where they find meaning and value. And I think nothing like that is going to happen until there is a poor people's revolution.
The Hunger Games. That's one of my favorite movies.
Oh,
Since Trump got into office, I was like, they're about to recreate the Hunger Games in real time, in the real
oh
world.
my God.
It's definitely moving in that direction. It really
Yeah,
is.
yeah. But we're gonna stop it though. We're gonna stop it, Malika. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
we are.
We are going to stop it. Our vote is going to stop it. Our mouths are going to stop it. We are going to rise up and protest. Even if we can't take to the street in masses, we're going to protest in the way that we're doing right now. You just told me you learned how to use Zoom for the first time. So we are going to use Zoom as a form of protest. We're going to use the phone as a form of protest until we can gather and rally back together again. You know, the Poor People's Campaign that was begun by William Barber, well, really by Martin Luther King Jr., and then Barber took it over a few years ago. That Poor People's Campaign, to me, is going to be the groundwork and the foundation for what this Poor People's Revolution is about. I'm not talking about a revolution of guns. Poor people ain't got guns. I'm not talking about a Poor People's Revolution when it comes to nuclear arms. Poor people don't have them. But this Poor People's Revolution is going to be based on righteous indignation. It's going to be based on you will no longer treat us in the way that you want to treat us, because God is on our side, because divine presence is with us. And as a result, we are going to change this world. We're going to change this nation, and it's going to start right here in Evanston. Yeah, that's what I believe. Yeah.
All right.
All right. Okay.
So much, Pastor Nabors, thank you, thank you, thank you. My fire is still raging, but
okay.
I'm still focused on righteous indignation.
Yes, there it is. Yeah.
In the right place to get results.
Yes, indeed.
So use
Thank you
for production.
Thank you, Malika. Okay.
Thank you, Pastor Nabors. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Have a great day now. Yeah.
You too. Okay, you all, this has been Malika, Evanston Live TV, and that was Pastor Nabors. You know, I know, it's a lot of people very, very angry out there right now, and rightfully so. But let's definitely take our passion, our anger, our pain, our fear, and just direct it into something productive that can bring about change. And we have so many people, actually, quite a few people just right here in Evanston who are, making some things happen. They have movements going, and Alderman Robin Rue Simmons being one of them, with the reparations, pioneering that. I mean, it's standing out around the country. And, you know, that is absolutely beautiful. Like no one thought reparations would even be possible. It was like a dream, you know, grabbing at golden rings, would it ever happen? But here it is. It's definitely a possible reality. You have people like Henry Wilkins out there trying to get a school back into the Fifth Ward. That was an injustice, taking it out. He's trying to put it back. He's on the move to make that happen. I mean, you have so many people in this community just, you know, not just talking, they're taking action. I have a piece of legislation I'm working with House Representative LaShawn Ford to make sure that our children are taught the true history of Black people in America. No more miseducation, no more misinformation, no more deleting our history out of the history books. People of color need to be in the history books from the cover to cover, okay? And so we are working on that bill, and it passed House Committee, and it goes to the floor now. So when the Capitol opens back up, you know, due to COVID-19, everything has come to a standstill, but it is still on the table, and we are excited about it and still moving on it. So there's a lot going on. Just, you know, taking that anger, that pain, that fear, that passion, and just directing it into something productive. Yes. So you all, again, please be safe out there with this COVID-19. Please follow the guidelines, wear your masks, and, you know, please direct your anger. I know you're feeling a lot, especially with Ahmaud Arbery, that story. Please, please, I know you're feeling it. I'm feeling it. It was very, very hard to watch that video. Let's direct our anger, our passion, into something productive that's really going to bring about a change in this country. Okay, you all have a great day. This has been Malika, Evanston Live TV.